and I pulled so hard and the chicken was so greasy that I cut my own thumb. I went like this. I went like this.
I cut my own whole
and
thumb.
I just thought, what a beast. And not like, yo, I'm
what
a
a
beast.
beast
I
of
mean,
burden.
Like, what a mange-ridden, disgusting creature that I am. So let it be written. So let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. I'm Tim. This is my brother James. This is Area of Effect. This is a community live stream. If this is your first time here, comment below. Make sure you interact. It's funny because I stopped for a second. So I was like, what if they're not watching it live? Tim overthinks things. If you're here now, talk to us. This is a live Q&A. It's about you. It's about the community.
If you're not here now, comment. You can still talk to us.
Yeah.
We just want to answer your questions
listen.
if you have them.
So you're going to be really mad. Are you ready? Do you know why I asked you to get me these?
So that you can do the news anchor thing?
Yeah! I knew you wouldn't get it from me if I told you.
I would absolutely not have stood up to get that for you.
So this
because I was like, I think you'll need something to write too, and you're like, oh yeah, probably.
No, I hear you.
Wait, what is that supposed to mean?
This is Area of Effect.
Hello, KMP. Hello, John Schwartz. Hello, Lawrence. It's nice to see you folks.
So we're getting started here. We're getting started a little late.
Oh, hello, Michelle. Why are we getting started late?
Why is every stream late except for professional streams? Technical difficulties.
Also, we talked a lot about stuff. We didn't make a video today. We talked about some really cool, fun stuff.
Yeah, which we'll get into. I do want to talk about that. It's 2 game systems that we're designing that, if all goes well, hopefully we'll be play testing this year. So
yeah, that'll be very cool.
I'm pretty excited about that. And it was fun, like riffing and going over it with you, because I've been working on it in a vacuum. So the questions you were asking were legitimately good design questions. Like, I hadn't thought about that. So it's really good. One of them is going to be, we'll talk about it later. The first thing that we do is I owe somebody an answer to a question. And this is
money. I just remembered that.
Oh, I do owe you money.
You don't have
wallet's.
Okay. Oh, I don't even.
My
wallet's in my car. I forgot.
My wallet's at my hacienda. No, you're going to be extra mad when I tell you. I'm probably going to end up.
I know.
I'm probably going to end up PayPaling it to you anyway.
Oh, I know. I'm not mad because I knew already. I'm like, he's not going to have cash for his own whatever. Yeah, so I knew that. As long as basically that counts as an I told you so.
Yeah, no, you got me. All right. So forgive me if I say your name incorrectly, but Bill Jaimez is what I believe that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Bill Jamies.
If
you say it really wrong, it's good.
Bill says, any tips at getting better at NPC dialogue? This is by far my weakest skill as a DM. My answer was practice in the car. Super duper practice in the car. The reason why I say in the car is because then everyone in traffic with you thinks you're talking to yourself, and it's hilarious.
That is good. I think specifically Tim means when you're alone in the car, not necessarily that the car is the perfect place to do it.
No, the acoustics in your Sentra. No, here's why. What you need to do is invite some colleagues to lunch, a nice work lunch, and then without warning,
while they're talking, while the music's on,
doing a Pepe Le Prawn from the Muppets.
Pepe Le Prawn?
I'm a Prawn guy. So you go through. Yep, it's all the dots are connecting. But there were a couple of other good replies to this tweet that I am going to read, and I'll make sure to give credit where credit is due. So the first one, Sly Flourish replied, and he said, "This might help." And there's actually an article on his website that I'll link. Let's see here. Drop the Die on Twitter says, absolutely. Finding a voice for all the NPCs is sometimes real difficult. I like to pick people from my own history and emulate them. My dad knew practically everyone, so I have a lot to pull from. I would also say characters from television and movies, because unless you're exceptional at accents, no one's going to know you're 3 degrees removed Tom Hardy from The Revenant.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's just going to be that character, but you're thinking of Tom Hardy from The Revenant, and you're like, Oscar. I want a YouTube Oscar. It's called
I thought that guy's name was Oscar. You're like, it's not Marty from the Revenant, it's Oscar.
I'm going to call it
heck is Oscar?
a Yosker.
Big Fry TV, I think that's Stephen Fry's YouTube channel. He said, "Hey guys, just hosted my second session of D&D. I loved your DM tips on how it's literally a made-up story from the group. It's going really well. I'm very happy to hear. That's always a great thing.
Awesome.
There's just more mic for us to punch when we move our hands now, so bear with us. Logo says, sup y'all. Everybody's saying hello.
What's up?
What was I about to tell? Oh, so I'm really bad at Irish and Scottish accents, but I've gotten better at an Irish accent from watching the IT Crowd. All you have to do is say things like incredulously, and like, if you're always out of breath, you have a pretty good Irish accent.
You know that you have to do it.
I know, but now I can't think of anything else he says. Oh, that's what
it is. Or whatever.
Yeah, but a fire at the sea parks. You're like, I couldn't say a fire at the sea parks. I sound like a leprechaun. But if you're like, a fire at the sea... Come on, Jen.
Dude, that is so
There's
good.
15 exits. The fire would have to start here, 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 and here. Still a little bit of a leprechaun.
No,
but
you're killing it.
If I did that in my game, you guys wouldn't know I was just doing Roy from the ID Crowd. It would just sound like an incredulous Irish person. And, an incredulous leprechaun, more like. But...
like...
Oh, Chris O'Dowd. Yeah, exactly. True mate. That's exactly what it is.
Nailing it.
Yeah. Just
so I want to see James as a Chris O'Dowd. So Bill, I hope that actually answers the question a little bit more. And there's actually, like I said, on Twitter, Sly Flourish replied with an article that he wrote. And so we'll probably, like I said, I'll post that in the comments. But so this is Area of Effect. This is a hangout where we talk to the community, we talk to each other, and that's really what this is about.
Luke said sick beard to probably you.
Oh, no. Definitely you.
No, he might have meant sick beard it's sick, like it's currently under the weather and needs some
Your
medicine.
beard is pale.
Needs some beard medicine.
Pale and ill.
What I did want to throw out there is if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat, and even if we don't answer them immediately, it's good to start getting questions, because if we ask for questions at the end, it's time to end right when we get all the best questions.
Exactly
so
that.
If you think of any questions, D&D related or potentially otherwise, we'll decide based on what they are. Let us know. I'll copy them down and we'll try to cover the questions, basically.
Yeah. So something I want to mention early on so that people have an opportunity to do it, because I want you to go right now into the comments of this video, and it's the very last thing in the comments of ours. So the video description. Sorry, the video description is to sign up for our eNewsletter. This is going to change, and the first issue of Mend the First Break is coming out on Tuesday. So you click on the link below. It's going to be called 5 Crit Friday, because honestly, I'm changing all that over tonight and tomorrow. But what I want you to do is go to the bottom of the video description and click on the link, and that will allow you to go to the MailChimp sign up. What is Mend the First Break? Well, it's not going to be an article. It's not going to be tips and tricks. For the most part, it's going to be usable things that you can actually use at your table and inspiration. So it's going to be less hypothetical and more specifics.
Yeah.
Right? So sign up for that. The first one's going to come out on Tuesday, and you don't want to miss it. It's got a super cool look that we worked with Alexander Kostick to design, and it's already packed with a lot of useful information. We're going to try to do one of those weekly, so be sure that you don't miss out, because the only way to get those is through that email. And what's funny?
I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay. So there's a possibility we might, a week later, publish. So Tuesdays will be published next Monday on the blog. But if you don't want to wait that long, make sure to subscribe. Mend the First Break.
This is a name that shouldn't be hard to say, but it's hard for me to say. Darius Jono, or Darius, as I like to say it. Hello, lovers. I've been practicing NPC voices on my bike on the way to work. That's perfect. There's also good practice in writing out flavor phrases, sentences that are emblematic of the person. To me, this is exactly why I'm able to do Roy O'Dowd if I say what he said, both because it's easy to say it, because you just heard someone say it.
Dude.
But as well because it's like you kind of can get into the character. But the thing I wanted to say that was funny is Jose mentioned that Tabletop Terrors right now is a football website. Do you know anything about that, Tim?
No, we must have been hacked by those Russians.
I haven't looked, but listen. I didn't know that. But I do know that you installed a new theme.
A new
so
WordPress theme.
I imagine that's what it is.
Bottom line is, the website wasn't working because we switched hosting and we had to update our version of, was it SQL?
MySQL and PHP.
Both of those things were like 0.1 versions behind. So I had all of the information on there. It was all looking good. That's a template. We then switched hosting, and none of what I made is loading back in, so I have to redo it. And again, that's going to happen tonight. So
for now, I guess it's about football. I hadn't looked, so it's
you should check it out. Funny. It's hilarious. It's going to be a cool site once it's up. I will say this, though. If you are interested in being an athlete professionally, please, can I have them?
No, you're just fiddling with them.
That's what they're for.
I know, and that's why I took them away.
If you want to be a professional athlete, we're also looking into that, depending on who replies.
Oh my God, you're not kidding. It's football. It's not like a little bit football. It's it's actual, straight up
that's
American
cool,
football,
though, right?
Not if it's football.
Well, what? Why?
Whose hair is in my mouth?
Hopefully mine. All right.
Fair enough.
So, we had another question.
I was going to say, we have a few questions. Do you want to...
in the thread.
Okay, yeah. Tim's
So,
go back to the thread.
What we do is, in the tabletop terror... Oh, God. I'm the worst. I didn't share the...
Oh, I did.
Yeah. You share the link on the threads that I made?
On the threads.
And in the event?
Not just... I didn't make a new post, but I shared it in the threads.
Okay.
I did want to answer Sammy's question real quick, because I think I know the answer, and it should be relatively quick. They asked if we have watched Critical Role, and if so, what's your take on it? I have not watched Critical Role. I know a few people that have, and they think it's cool. I think you watched some of it, or no?
I did. Okay. So, I think when I watched Critical Role, I wasn't ready for Critical Role. And it was more that my expectations were different. So, I actually am getting back into it with Season 2. They just started Season 2. You probably already know this. And that is going to be a really good jumping on point for me. Because I gained a lot of respect for the players. Seeing behind the scenes stuff and seeing interviews with Matthew Mercer, who's the game master. And so I'm going to give it another shot because it wasn't what I expected, and that's my fault. So I didn't dislike it. I just didn't think that I wanted to devote my time to it, especially because I was so far behind. So yes, that is...
Yeah, I figured that'd be pretty quick because I was like, I know we haven't watched it at length. So
that's me long answer. So in the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group, what is that? Well, we are a subsidiary of our parent company. Is that how you say it? Absolute Tabletop, which is our publishing company.
Well, no, yeah, okay. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
So we'll church that up later, but that's the brass tacks.
Yes, basically we are part of a publishing company. That company has a Facebook group where you can go interact with us, and that's where Tim posted. If we do area of effect videos in the future, you can go on there and ask questions and talk about what the topic might be, stuff like that.
Exactly. So Thomas Frey posted, how do you guys feel about players calling out roles instead of the DM asking for them?
Like roles, like checks.
Right.
Not
so,
like
and
roles, yeah.
He actually linked to a really good article, and I think this article, it's runagame.net. In fact, what do you think? I'll shoot this to you and you put it in the, just because I don't have the video pulled up.
Don't worry, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Go to the Absolute Tabletop official group and you'll find it. It's runagame.net.
So Run a Game, and he basically talks about how there are problems with this, specifically because... I'll let you read the article. Here's my take on this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like...
Here's my take. Here's my take. The Dungeon Master's job is to direct. So while they don't have necessarily more authority as far as the story and what everyone is agreeing on, like we all need to make a story together and our rights in that are equal to have fun, it's my job, my role and function is to direct that story. Like as a director and also as a referee. When you start calling for certain roles, even if it's correct and even if it would work, for my taste, what you're doing is deciding what's important. In my games, you don't roll for everything. You roll for the things that I want there to be a chance of failure at and things that are challenging. So for me, if I have an object that I'm ready to just tell you, like, oh, you would know this, and you roll for it, what you're doing is you're putting the focus, you're zooming in on what you think is important about the object. So I'll give you an example of what we're talking about. So if I say, you walk into this cathedral, and there is this relief, and it's carved with this battle scene, and then the player says, you know, they're like, Arcana 16, what do I know about it? Well, you're assuming that there's something magical about it.
Yeah, so I think I think the important thing is that person mentioned it. What was the original question?
The original question is, how do you feel about that? Okay. How do you feel if I'm in your game and you describe that relief to me and I go, History 22, what do I know about it?
I think that basically what I want to say first is it's not a problem I've ever had. I have had people say, can I make an Arcana check? I have had polite players ask, can I make a check to see what I know about it? And it's up to me to decide or reference, because most often I have something that I'm like, oh yeah, this is, I was going to ask anyway. But most times if they don't need a check, I would say, well, you don't actually need the check. What you know is this.
Yeah.
Now, the important thing is, I think what you just described is not good, but not because it takes all of that stuff, but I think it's a symptom of a larger problem where that's kind of like not playing D&D. It's like, I don't know how to describe it because I don't want to say they're doing it wrong, but you are sort of subverting what the GM's job is.
That's what I think.
By rolling and saying this and this and this, okay. Because it's fair to say, I roll perception, what do I see? But it makes more sense to allow the GM to ask you, because like you said, you need to be able to fail. If there are no traps, if there's no chance that there's any traps, and we're walking through an inn, and you make a perception roll, I'll probably just say, you don't see anything.
Sure.
Even if it's very high. But in the same respect, we could have avoided that whole thing if you were just like, well, we're in a tavern, I won't worry about it. It's the GM's job to give you those clues that you're like, hey, an Arcana check might be good here.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the Game Master to give cues, because it is a game. And I want, for you, if you're playing at my table, I want to give you a couple of things to focus on, and then you choose what to focus on. But I'm not going to have the mystery of the game be you poking at the room until you find what I'm thinking of. So, if the player throws out, I want to do Arcana this.
Somebody made a joke about the paper being more dramatic like on these.
Indeed. But the idea, so if I, as a game master, am trying to put together a scene, and I'm working with what I know the possibilities for conflict are in that scene. If you call for those rolls, I'm going to have to feel like I'm put in an awkward position of, well, basically I'll tell you what I think you know, but you're deciding what lens you're looking through, whereas I want to maybe kind of guide you in a different way.
Yeah.
But
I agree. That's what I mean. I think the most important thing is, to me, this isn't a common problem, but I do think that it's a thing that is a different style than what I'm used to, I guess.
Sure. And if that's something that's agreed upon, for instance, if I'm playing with all game masters and I trust them in their storytelling chops, I might be okay with this, but I wouldn't just make it my normal.
And again, I think no matter what, there's a difference between saying, hey, can I make a perception roll to check if there are traps? It's just a weird sort of
assumptive role of playing.
Yeah, to go, I do this, and you're like, whoa, slow down.
Okay, hang on, because
and again, that's just not for me. There may be groups that enjoy that, but right. I do think in that case, I'm like, no, I don't think I would want that in my game. Is a good way to play.
Yeah, and to finalize the point, if I'm doing my job well, it's like in a movie when the ominous music starts playing. You know that there's a trap.
Yeah.
Play ominous music in your details, in your descriptions, so that the players aren't surprised by a trap because they didn't do okay, it's a hallway.
Exactly.
I roll for traps.
Yeah,
Signal
exactly. It's like
them.
You have
Signal.
to. Yeah. I thought you were going to say it's like in the movie when the something happens and the person next to you goes, "Why is that guy doing that?" And you're like, we have the same amount of information.
Right.
And if this is a good movie or show, they're going to tell us in about 10 seconds.
Right. It's going to reveal itself. But, that would be my thought. I'd probably, if I had a player do it, I'd probably let it ride until a break or the end of the game, and then I'd talk to them privately and just say, hey, so that I can direct the game.
Yeah.
And kind of have you follow along but still contribute, let me decide. Because in that instance, what if I thought this isn't a magical thing, but it's a historical artifact? You would actually have rolled history.
Yeah, exactly.
Or wilderness, because it's carved out of wood. Anyway, so that would be my answer.
I think we just gave the Dragon Gamer a little Christmas.
Oh, we did?
Because they jumped in the chat and said, do more Weapon Master, and then they typed please 2 times. And then I was very happy to let them know that we came out with Weapon Master 2. I assumed they meant more than that.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, listen. And they were like, oh, okay.
Let me.
Yeah. So I thought it was very funny that we did actually have more of what they were asking for.
So, do more Weapon Master.
Done.
I got to do the thing.
Check. Done.
I threw it.
I noticed. So,
but I don't like the change in thickness of my
I know. I figured you wanted multiple pieces, not because you wanted to, not because you needed multiple pieces, but because I hate writing on one piece of paper on a hard surface, especially one that's textured. I know you didn't plan on writing.
That's headcanon. We can do that.
So we have a few other questions, but I wanted to answer again, kind of the less sort of conversation-y, deep ones, and more of this. Sammy, who earlier asked something I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't remember what other question you asked. They asked if we ran games for the community, and if so, how do they get in those games?
That's a really good question. And
we talked a little bit earlier about the Absolute Tabletop official group on Facebook. You can go there. It's free. You just say, I want to join that, and we'll let you in. Critical Role is the question that person asked. There we go. I knew it was something. I'm sorry I didn't remember what it was. They, in that group, is where we find games to play, and where if we're running a game, we post and say, hey, who wants to play in this game? There's no special thing. You just, if the times line up and you like what we post, on our interest post, we say, it's going to be this time, this game, this kind of style, all that. You go on there and you post, and we pick players, and that's how you get into games.
In fact, and we probably should have put this in the title of area of effect, Game With Us.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I'm doing is a game series that is going to be starting this coming Wednesday called Dragon Grin Alive. And the concept behind this is we're getting ready to kickstart our campaign world setting, and nothing flexes my world building muscles like having to run a game for other people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be running a lot of encounters. They're basically going to be shortish kind of games, an hour, 2 hours max, but they're meant to be episodic, and those would be a perfect thing for you to jump into. So in the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group, there's actually a really long thread with people who've shown interest. Throw your name in there. If you just search Dragon Grin Alive, it will pop up in your feed, and just put that you're interested. The games are going to be most likely weeknights from about 10 p.m. Eastern to midnight Eastern. Maybe every other week or so, maybe once a month. But I'm looking to run more of these. So that is a good opportunity. If you want to game with us, James, myself, I'll wrangle you into some of these. Hop in, and we're going to have a lot of fun exploring Dragon Grin.
Alt tab. Okay, so we have a bunch of questions. If we want to answer some,
let's do it.
Specifically, Luke Jackson. This was about NPCs, so I figured we can do this one. Luke Jackson said, I've actually been trying to improve my improv and NPC speaking. I have notes on their topics of discussion and what they know, but it is always difficult for me to improv conversation for them. It sounds like you have the right idea. As far as, for me, what I do is I write, basically, like you said, the things that they know and the things they might say. And then you don't have to say it's special or anything. It's okay if somebody repeats themselves. If your players walk up to an NPC, a person they've never met especially, and they're like, hey, what do you know about the crazy things going on in town? There's only so much they know. And if they asked another question about those and they said, I already told you, I don't know. The important thing is, for me, you just kind of pretend you're the NPC, I guess.
Sure.
And it's like, it doesn't have to be specific, and you don't have to make sure. You're just like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's okay to say I don't know. It's okay.
Dude, and one of my biggest tricks, here's the thing. Not all of us, and I don't know your degree of ability. I don't know if you're an actor or if you're an improv person, but don't let that limit playing NPCs. And the best way to do that is, it is okay to describe what they said without saying it word for word.
It just occurred to me, I ran a game the other night, and I don't know, I guess I didn't want to do NPC voices. That's the easiest way to put it. I was kind of like, it was a new group. I wasn't sure. I just described what the NPC said. I was just like, they tell you this.
Yep, and that's totally okay. Because it'll do two things. One, if you have those key phrases, like those quotes that the NPC would say, you can just say those like, "Oh, everybody knows that once the king died, this place went downhill." That's their box text when you click on them in the video game. That's the part they
recorded in the video game, but then the rest is all just, you just got to read it.
So, when the players say, "Well, I want to ask him about Lord Valor. Has he seen him?" You can simply reply, he squirms a little bit, and he seems like he's uncomfortable, but he describes how, the last time he saw Lord Valor was about 2 weeks ago, and he looked sick. It's okay.
The other awesome thing is you can just kind of... It's much easier for me to do that. And again, like you said, you can still give your NPCs a lot of character by saying something like them. Having that, like, one phrase or, like, a few things they might say. Mm-hmm. But then you are more... It's more likely that you can feed your players information without confusing it behind what an NPC says.
Yeah.
So they're like, "Oh, I saw Lord Valor and he wasn't looking good." They don't know exactly what that means. You know what I mean? He might mean sick, he might mean something else. But when you tell them, "Oh, he said he looked sick," you know what I mean? It's so much easier to just get the concept across directly to the players, rather than trying to have the NPC tell the character and the player decode that.
Right. So the idea is do whatever you're comfortable with at your skill level, and the more you do that, the more comfortable you'll get with being able to say what that person would say. Because the other thing that can happen is as you're talking as this NPC, half of your brain is trying to think of what to say, and you might give the players wrong information, and that's more awkward. Because then you're like, "Well, I didn't mean he was, and then, so just give them the information and say, "He said this, and it looked this way." Exactly. That's how I would do it. And the more comfortable you get, you can get, like, better and better at it.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a few other questions. I'm going to copy this one, but... No Name much earlier asked, "What's the best way to do random encounters during travel?" To me, like, I don't know what you mean by best way. I guess, to me, if you have a specific problem with random encounters, it'd be easier, to sort of supply maybe a solution or how I would handle it. Mm-hmm. But the important thing is, as far as I know, most random encounters, you have a table.
Yep.
You roll on it when they go, and then, some of the things on there are nothing happens, and some of them aren't.
Pretty much.
Again, like I said, if you had a specific problem, I think that'd be easier to handle.
Well, I can tell you that this, to me, it boils down to what kind of game you're playing.
Yes.
Because what I'm finding is I like to run various kinds of games. It's like there are certain games that I play that I would not put a random encounter into because I'm trying to have a short story effect. I want there to be a beginning, a middle, and an end of the session. And if I throw that random encounter in there for that game, the tone might change and the pacing will be way off and we might not finish.
Yeah.
That is not to say that having a random encounter into certain games doesn't add its own level of reality. We're running a hex crawl game called Those That Remain that started out as a narrative game.
Yeah.
So in the first probably 3 or 4 episodes, I would never throw a random encounter because I have a tightly sort of planned set of circumstances I want them to overcome to create a very specific tone. So the question you need to ask yourself is, does your game merit random encounters?
Yeah.
Because the truth is, about all RPG combat, it can be fun, but it is also one of the longest things that can turn into a slog.
Yeah.
So the way that I would handle it is I would, if I had to run one, I'm like, yeah, this game, this probably be random encounters. There's a PDF from Wizards of the Coast. It's monsters by terrain type. I would do that. If they're in the desert, I would run and I would just roll and basically choose one of those monsters. This can be very deadly, so you need to make sure that your players understand that every monster isn't for them to beat. And understand, too, if you put a monster in front of the players, they're going to attack it.
Okay, so No Name, they responded and they said, and this actually shines a lot of light on it, because it is a campaign. They say, I am running a Storm King's Thunder campaign, and I have the random encounters table. I just don't know when to roll in it. Also, yeah, I only use it when I think I have enough time. To that specifically, if you... Basically, I would just roll it whenever they travel, and, I mean, that's the easiest way to do it.
And
the other thing is if you... For me, I would decide when I want a random encounter to happen, and then I would roll to see which one. So in this case, it would be if I want to tax the player specifically, they just got through something and they're on their way back to rest, and I want to just kind of ratchet up the difficulty a little bit more and show them the world's alive, a few wolves might show up. They can easily, like, these aren't like super high challenge rating, but they're down on spell slots. They don't have as many, they're down on hit points, they're down on all this stuff, and it's just a little bit more. And then maybe try to tie it into the plot. Somehow. Maybe it'll get mentioned earlier, or mentioned later, sorry.
Yeah.
But the idea being that if you... Basically when they travel, I guess. I don't know.
No, that would be it. So what is the point, design-wise? What is a random encounter? What is it trying to do? Whenever I think of these questions, I always think, well, what's my goal? And the way I posit this is I say, I want to use X to do Y.
Yeah.
I want to use a random encounter to do what? You got to answer that question for yourself. But for me, a random encounter is to tax the players and their resources. So what you're saying, travel. Well, what kind of travel? Well, any sort of travel that you'd cut away. Those far shots in Lord of the Rings when you see them walking on the ridge.
Yeah.
Not the tight scenes where they're conversing.
Yeah, not walking from the pub to the whatever.
Right. Now, you can decide. But the main place that I would use random encounters, every single time the players rest.
Yeah.
Because that's when they're like, okay, going to recharge my hit points. That is when they'll feel the most dangerous. That is when they'll feel the most deadly. Is when, like you said, they're down on spell slots, they're down on hit points, they're trying to get those things back, and a troll shows up. That is going to be one of the most deadly troll encounters they've ever experienced, and they'll remember it because it didn't happen when they were fresh, the sun's high in the sky, and they're ready to fight a troll. So that would be it. When they're traveling and when they're resting is when I would do it. But remember, this will really stretch out your game, and Storm Things Kunder is like this thick anyway, so yeah, it's up to you if you want that element of randomization in the game. Maybe try to roll it once per session or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's the important part is when you want to. I know that's kind of a weird question, but I'm like, if there are going to be certain situations, but if you never feel the need, I wouldn't worry about it.
If things are going and the pacing is going well, final thought, when the players think they're doing well and things are on a high note.
Yep, there you go.
Boom. And always follow the die. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Because then you're just throwing a challenge at them unfairly to kill them, which can also be okay.
Bananas. I keep trying to Alt-Tab, but I'm not used to this keyboard, and I can't see it, and there's a Windows key, and it brings up a different menu. It's a whole thing.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. So, okay, do you have... We didn't get Tome of Beasts, right? That's what it's called?
I did, yeah.
Somebody asked about
I bought
Tome
the
of Beasts.
PDF on Drive-Thru RPG.
Are there any creatures you have enjoyed using? This is one of those first.
So I don't remember what it was called. It's this mandrill sort of thing, and it has these ridiculously long arms. Like, the art is... it's really, really ridiculous. What I did was...
Spark mandrill!
Pretty much. It's like...
That's, from Mega Man X.
Oh, I know.
I know you know. They may not know.
Oh, true. The whole thing...
The show is not for you.
I reskinned it to be an eldritch creature with a ton of tentacles from the Shadowfell. So it's got a cool grab attack and a grapple situation. It was really kind of dangerous. So that is
the one.
That is one that I used.
We have a lot of questions, so if you don't want to come up with another one, that's okay.
Oh, perfect.
We don't usually.
That's one that I use. That's one that I memorably used. But all the creatures in there are super fun and they're easy to reskin. Just pick one at random and make it a goblin, and it'll be some kind of crazy goblin. What?
Okay, so Logo Sarsgaard earlier asked if we had any ideas for an urban encounter down by the docks. This is gonna seem like a cop-out, but we did a video on our channel called Encounter Machine that we do with Hanker and Fernale from Runehammer Games, and we literally built an encounter down by the docks.
It's a whole hour-long live stream. That you can.
That would be on YouTube, right? Because I think that one was one we pre-recorded.
It should be live. It should be live.
Oh,
no,
it was
wasn't. I think we did it live. Yeah, and it should be called Encounter Machine.
That would be a really good place to start. Because I'm like
an hour.
Couldn't. That's what I mean. But we couldn't. And I think we roughly go over it at the beginning, and then at the end we recap it really well.
Yeah.
If you're not in for an hour, just skip to the part where I start talking a lot and we recap it, and you'll be really good. But
Yep, that's a good answer.
I think that's a really good, yeah. I don't think you're going to get a better one than that. Baron Cantrell, any techniques for interesting ways to get into character? I had my players describe what their character's favorite meal was. It was very insightful. Any you guys can think of? Yeah, I do like that. Often, you have people describe, what they're wearing or what they're doing. You set up a situation. You're like, all right, you're on the airship, on the way to wherever. What would your character be doing?
Yeah.
And that's a fun way because it's like, it's the downtime where they wouldn't be sleeping. They might be writing in their journal, or they might be preparing a meal, or it could be countless things. But it's a similar thing where you give them the sort of leeway, you give them the area to play in. That's whatever your character would be doing when they're just hanging out on the way to do something. And they can describe, they can tie it in as much as they want, and it seems like I think that always helps me get in character when we do that.
Yeah, and Matt Click from A Fistful of Dice is where I learned that trick. And so he'll typically give a little bit of colorful description, very brief amount, and give them something to be doing. Meaning, you don't just say, all right, so you guys are in a tavern, what are you doing? That's not evocative.
Yeah.
They'll sort of look at you blankly, but if you say, as you prepare, inside the tunnels of the gladiatorial pit, you realize that you're sharpening a rusted trident and you believe that this might be your last day on Earth. Or you see someone else sharpening a rusted trident and you realize this might be your last day on Earth. What are you doing as you prepare for this fight in the arena?
Exactly, and you're like, so the person thinks, what's going through their head? How did I get here? What's happening?
What would I do if I
All
felt
the
like I was
stuff.
going into the arena? And then you start hearing these cool character moments like, I would, clutch the brooch that my mother gave me and all this. They start to really think in terms of characters. That would be my thought. And you can even start the session like that. That's what he typically does.
Truemate says the arboreal grappler is the one you were thinking.
You're right. It is.
They got it.
Killer.
Okay, so I keep pressing the wrong button. We had some other good ones.
I'll tell you what. That was awesome. This is what I want to do. What was the name?
Who? For which one?
Arboreal Grappler.
Oh, that was... Oh, Truemate.
Truemate.
Would ask the question and mention the arboreal
Truemate,
grappler.
if you're around and you're still here listening to this, email tabletopterrors@gmail.com and we will give you a free supplement. I will send you a code that James will generate for a free supplement from Absolute Tabletop because that was killer and there's like 350 pages in that book.
You just got? Point of inspiration.
Boom.
Except it's a free supplement.
A point of inspiration. So there you go. Sláinte.
And then Prupra said, Hank is such a sicko genius at building encounters, and I love
Really
the
is.
energy you three have. Like I said, Encounter Machine, I'm like, there's no better urban encounter down by the docks that I could tell you about right now that would be better than that.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Okay, so this one is a little bit longer. So do you remember when we were on Rob's channel and we talked about a cool... Darius asked if we ever considered revisiting something we talked about on Rob's channel about Dragon Grin. I don't remember what it was. Have either of you thought more on the hypothetical Dragon Grin storyline you talked about during your interview with Performance Check? I'm so sorry.
Man, I don't remember what it was.
That could have been anything.
Can you... Well, and the other thing...
Because I asked when, and this was a while ago. I didn't know if you did one
Yeah,
recently.
no, I don't remember the specific details, but I can say much like any myth, like, okay, for instance, Batman. You can pick up a bunch of different issues of Batman and there'll be a different artist, different look, different storyline. That's kind of how Dragon Grin is with us because we developed the whole thing and it changed a lot along the way. So something we might have talked about with Rob could have changed drastically.
Yes, very likely did after such a long
Or
time.
evolved into something totally different, or it could be exactly the same. So if you can give us some clues, I can definitely give it a shot and try.
Okay, so this is Darius also asked, I hope I'm saying that right, Darius. I like saying Darius because there's a funny sketch. There's on something, I think it's a Key and Peele sketch about Darius Rucker, so I say that. How many details would you say is best in describing a scene or person?
3.
My style of GMing is highly detailed and the RP is very much an emotive thing. Do you prefer to go lean or flowery language? Now, that's a good answer, but the why is, and this is something that Tim says all the time, and I try to always remember this, there's only so much your players will remember because everybody's kind of trying to do their own thing. They're listening, they might be writing their stats or whatever. So it's not to say that I don't go flowery, but I focus on just a few of the most important things. And then I allow them to ask questions.
Yep.
So instead of a very long, which I was really bad about this before, I describe all this stuff, and then the player goes, well, wait, so, okay, it's a cathedral, but how many pews are there? And what I didn't realize is at the time, I said something, and they're wondering the whole time, trying to remember their question about how many pews there are, and not listening about the stained glass with the this and this. So I tend to go pretty lean with just a few things.
Yep.
I like to play a game when I GM now, which I wish I did this before. I like to play a game where I talk as little as possible, but I still have to get the same amount of information out. So I'm not like mum's the word, but I'm like, all right, when I go in here, I want to say like 3 sentences about this room and then be silent.
Yep.
Because it's like, what's the most important thing? This. And if they're like, all right, how many windows are there? I'm like, okay, there's this many windows.
Yep, I love that. And so to speak to that, remind me of how many windows are there, because I'm gonna give an answer to that in a second.
Okay.
But what I was gonna say is my go-to trick, and you'll see this in our adventure kit, Oath of the Frozen King.
That was the other thing I was going to mention.
Sights, sounds, and sensations. Okay, that is the easiest way, and I do one of each of those things. And as James said, I let it kind of roll out. Now, that is a rule of thumb. If they walk into a brand new place, as he said, like a cathedral, that can be trickier. But the sight is I would keep it as general as possible. You walk into a massive cathedral. The stained glass windows are emitting this blanket of colorful light over innumerable pews. The sound is you hear the wind rustling the trees as it scrapes the cathedral roof. And then the sensation is, which is like feel, touch, the floor under you crunches underfoot as the dust and leaves have been dragged in from, misuse.
Boom. Here's the thing. That doesn't tell you how big the room is. That doesn't tell you how many doors the room is. That
Purposely
doesn't tell you how many
avoided it. Purposely avoided it.
And the way I'd like to describe that is when you walk into a room in real life, you notice the light coming in from the window. You don't notice how many pews there are. Even if you counted them, it would take a minute. Now, if you then said how many, now you specifically put it in that it was enumerable, it's a different story, but the idea is if they needed to know because there's a combat happening now,
Sure.
you would say, I would be even more likely to say there's, more than this many and fewer than this many, or, near you there's, you can see that there's a few, you know what I mean? Like still not really tying it down, because if you're kind of describing what the character sees, not the absolute exact thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't want to get too esoteric on it, but perception is reality, right? When was the last time you walked into a cathedral and you're like, holy cow, look at all these pews? But then you came back another day and you're like, oh, there aren't as many as I thought. So I keep all this stuff really general because I like doing theater of the mind and keeping a fluid narrative.
Yeah.
So keep it as general as possible until you have to make it specific, and I think you'll kill it.
Exactly, if you let the characters come up with the specifics.
Well, how many pews are there? Well, why? What do you want to do?
Exactly.
Right? I'm
That's
not going to say,
because they should ask if there's a reason, but if there's not a reason, you can say, oh, you count them, but while that's happening, a goblin comes in and friggin' stabs you.
And it's different if you're solving a puzzle or something. Oh, why? What are you trying to do? Well, I want to see if and this is almost always, well, it's because of this. Well, I want to see if there are enough pews between me and the goblin for me to sort of like duck and jump behind a few of them. Yeah, totally. I'll allow that.
Exactly. And
Still haven't defined how many there are.
So Dragon Gamer asked a few times, and I think this is a relatively simple one. It's simple and difficult. I don't have experience in being a DM and only 2 other friends to play with. What do I do? My suggestion would be, it looks like you already watch YouTube videos. It's a great thing. Tim and I have a Learn to Play D&D. Very, very, very basic. Walks you through it very slowly if you're curious about that. But one of the best things that Wizards did is they made the... I always forget what it's called, but it's like the starter kit. It's not called the starter kit.
The basic rules.
Well, yeah, but it's like the thing you buy.
Yeah, starter set.
That's what I mean. I think it's... Oh, okay, it's called the starter set. I always call it the starter kit, whatever. There's the starter set, and what that is it's a small book of basic rules. It's a little adventure. It comes with 4 pre-generated characters, a set of dice. That is the absolute best way, I think, to start playing if you don't know. Somebody mentioned this in the chat. Prupra mentioned if you'd like to become a DM one day, just jump right in and get your XP as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
No matter what, someone's going to have to GM. Whichever, I think they even say in the rules, whichever one of you, feels it the most or is the most interesting. Oh, they said they have that. That's perfect. You're on the way. If, there's nothing more I can say except for right now, if you have it and if you like Weapon Master and have played that, I think there are no more steps between you and playing, but sitting down to play.
If you're looking for people to play with, if that's the issue, join the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group and go in there. Say, hey, I'm here. Tabletop Terror sent me. I'm looking for a beginner-friendly game. And you can even say, hey, I'm looking to practice DMing. Will anybody jump in? I would be surprised if you didn't find a handful of people who would jump onto either Google Hangouts or Skype or whatever and play with you. That group is really good about finding players and finding game masters.
Exactly. Okay, so we've answered this before. I think we should be finishing up soon because we have questions on questions. We don't usually have so many questions, but like I said, asking early allows us to get a backlog and we're not just waiting for questions. C.A. Hollenbach asked, I'm considering having an NPC betray the party. What is your take on this? Am I risking upsetting my players? The NPC is a good guy and has been with them since day one. I'm going to play the game where I try to say as little as possible as a DM.
I hate that game.
My answer would be make sure they have a really good reason to do it. The reason can't be because you want to trick your players. I'm not saying that it is, but it's important that your players never feel that your reason is that you want to trick them. But if they had a really good reason, like their family's in trouble, they could try to betray the players, but let them roleplay on that. If they, try to betray them, they're like, oh, they'll kill my family. The players can offer to help. No, we'll protect them. Whatever. Just make sure that whatever happens, it's not a railroad. Yeah. And if your players are like, it depends on the players basically. But if you know your players, it sounds like it's a long-running campaign, something like that.
Yeah,
it should be fine. But like I said, just make sure the NPC has a really good reason to do it, or your players may get upset.
Yeah, I'll say this. There are not a lot of scenarios where that will go well.
Exactly.
And here's why. Because I'm guessing at your motive. And your motive is you really want to do something cool that is surprising to the players and makes them feel like there's the whoa moment. There's a difference between whoa and what? So, I'm just warning you, it could be amazing. It could go really well. Depends on your players. Depends on how you do it. But I'm warning you that they will never trust an NPC the same way again, or at least for a long time.
Yeah.
That's going to just be the tax you pay that every person now, they're like, mm-mm.
Exactly.
So, I'm going to throw out an idea that goes against a trope and I think could cause more conflict. I think this could be cooler. I don't know your group, but I think this would be more memorable and produce a lot more conflict. Figure out the reason why your NPC would betray the party.
Exactly.
Right? What you said. Then have them come to the party and say, listen, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
This is what I'm up against. My first instinct, I'm not going to lie to you, was to betray you all. That was my first instinct. But I can't. We've been adventuring too long, blah, blah, blah. Will you help me?
Exactly. Then you give them a chance, but you still get some of the weight of the betrayal.
They won't say no. Yeah. They will help this dude or dudette. The problem is if you're going to all of a sudden make them like super evil and all this.
Well, yeah, and then Sammy
totally
mentions...
different bag of worms.
Yeah, throw in hints that they might betray the party, subtle signs that someone might pick up on. Basically, give them a chance. The problem is it's like a trap that you don't tell them about.
Well, yeah.
It's a lot more complicated, but the idea is part of the reason it's such a dangerous thing is because it's difficult to have give them any chance to avoid it, and it feels kind of railroady. That's what I meant when I was just make sure it doesn't happen too fast if it does.
Right. And then if they find out before you want them to find out, that's tough for you because now they're ruining your surprise. And what's going to happen?
Yeah.
The scene I just described, except you're not in control of it. Which is also fine, but you can't hide it so well that they have no chance of finding out.
Yeah, exactly.
In general, just understand that sort of betrayal, no matter what, feels a very certain way, and if your players aren't down with that, they won't have the wow moment that you think they'll have. They'll actually be pissed most of the time. So that would be my advice. I'd probably not do it, but if you are going to do it, make it so they can find out and telegraph it well and foreshadow it well enough so that it doesn't seem like...
Keemstar says, guy on the left has been gifted with better facial hair. So if my hair is this length, you can't tell, but there's actually a part right here where it just doesn't grow. It's just empty.
So no,
it's
you
just
need
like
to
there's
get
none.
You need to get a beard comb over.
Oh yeah, that's what it is basically. I'm like, dude, if it's about here, I'm like, you can't tell on camera.
The truth is, I can see it. Yours would look identical to this if it grew out as long. I've been growing this for months.
That's what I mean. I'm like, mine doesn't. Well, the other thing is, my skin is very sensitive. I'm a sensitive, delicate flower. And if my hair, even about this, I have to trim it. The other guy is better looking, though, so don't sweat. Well, I appreciate that, I guess.
Listen, I'm the fat bearded one. I'm okay with that.
So, but what I was going to say is, if mine is a little bit longer, like basically a little bit longer than this, it starts to, my skin gets really dry and I can't moisturize it because there's hair all over it. It's a whole thing.
I've been using beard oil, and it's like an all natural with aloe in it. I don't know but my wife got it for me for Christmas, and it's awesome. And I smell good. I smell real good. You want to smell this beard oil? That's our new supplement.
You want to smell this beard oil.
You want to smell good. You want to smell real good. This beard oil. So we got any more questions? I think we got time for like -6 more.
I was going to say we do, but...
I don't know. Pick a short one. How many more?
A bunch. Let's see.
Well, thank you, Prue Prue. I saw that. She said she thinks we're both pretty darn pretty.
Thank you. Sorry, I was dealing with people in the chat that, I don't know, were trolling. Okay, here's another good one. Luke Jackson asks, I've been thinking about giving out XP for a long time because I've always been super lazy about it. What's your guys' philosophy on Milestone versus literal XP for monsters killed after every combat?
Milestone.
I'm super big on Milestone because...
Because I'm not an accountant?
Well, it is a little bit easier, but the other thing is it often... Milestone. It often... can be complicated. I think some people really love that, but the important thing is then you have to, make sure you give it out for, well, not make sure, but then you want to consider giving it out for exploration, and sometimes it's hard to set up your encounters to make sure they level up at a time you want. It's so much easier to say, you guys level up.
I feel like most of the people that I play with, it's a vibe, and I know that probably doesn't help you, but it is more like, okay, you've earned it. Some big things happen. I also allow them to gain levels more quickly early on, so they feel a little bit of progression if they start at level 1.
Yeah.
So I will often, from level 1 to level 2, that might be one adventure. That might be 2 adventures. Level 2 to level 3, maybe 1 or 2, 3 adventures, depending. But then once they get to level 3, I'll kind of slow it down and add it like every story arc.
Yeah.
When they've earned it. What have they done? What? Look, I've killed 100 goblins, right? Thousands. Am I really getting experience? Am I really getting experience making a sandwich? I've done that 100 times.
Yeah, exactly.
But when I try to replicate Jersey Mike's subs with their sauce, then I get a little XP. So I go Milestone all day.
Yeah. Okay, so...
One more? Uno más?
Yeah. Most of the other ones, they're just like so, like there's a lot to be said about them, I guess.
Sure.
And that sometimes is a good thing, but when we run out of time, it's not as good.
Okay, so I have an idea. Why don't we read the questions, and anyone who wants to comment with answers, they can do that. I mean, after the fact.
We can do that.
Okay, and then we'll pick one, but if you want to just read some of these questions, we have a super smart community. We have really cool people who watch. They can jump in.
Okay, so somebody asked, I'm currently building a world which is essentially a large... Oh, I say somebody. Lawrence Kemworthy asked. I'm currently building a world which is essentially a large archipelago of uncountable islands. And
you want me to jump in? You got a troll.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I don't have your... I'll jump in on the mod.
Yeah.
The mod spot. We're the Monster Squad. My volume's going to be up. Because I'm a scrub.
Essentially, a large archipelago of uncounted islands. Legend has it that no one has ever counted all of them, and new ones always pop up. You guys have any ideas for that? I think this is really cool because it's very interesting in the sense that you're able to kind of have a roll table of islands potentially, and the idea is that, you know, because there are uncounted islands, you can do a really cool maybe hex crawl or something. Like Tim said, if you want in the chat, you can go ahead and you know, give answers if you want, you know, to those questions. Yeah, today has been, we haven't have been live in a while, and today has been an interesting one for people commenting. So
it's cool though. Here's the thing. If you have people who are enjoying something, whatever it is, we're having a great conversation, this is really cool, and we're enjoying hanging out with you, there's always going to be someone who, for whatever reason, doesn't enjoy that thing. And it's bad, but what they try to do is make everyone else not enjoy it too. But you know what? It doesn't bother me any. But I will say this. Let's say that is question... How many alt accounts... You know what? I'm impressed at this troll.
At this stage, yeah.
How many alt accounts do you have? This is what I think. Can you imagine what you could accomplish if you were positive and said good things? You'd probably have a YouTube channel bigger than ours.
Exactly. C.A. Hollenbach says, make some islands giant dragon turtles. They do have those. That's one of like some of my favorite monsters. I think it's in the monster menu. There's a dragon turtle. And yeah, it's basically like that same idea where some of it's what is it? Jacob Norman mentioned recently that it was there's a book and it's Turtles All the Way Down. And I believe if I remember correctly, somebody asked like what, you know, if the world is built on the back of a turtle, what like sea is that turtle in? Oh. And then the joke is it's turtles all the way down. So it's like it just is all turtles going all the way down.
So well, I was just going to say that's actually... So, do you want to answer it, or do you want to save people to comment and do it?
Oh, well, that was one person mentioned.
Because I would say, if you guys have anything...
Prupra says, what kind of climate are these islands in, Lawrence? Or do they span more than one climate zone?
Oh, that's a good question. Do you call it archipelagical?
Archipelago.
No, I know. I'm saying
it's an archipelagical thing, guys.
It's an archipelagical climate. So... The first question is from Lawrence. If you want to comment below, question 1, and you can just put question 1. So question 1
he's going to use the paper, guys.
I am, for real. Question 1 is, how would you explain these appearing and disappearing chains in this archipelago? Go. Put that in the comments. We got any more?
Questions?
Yeah. We'll just wrap up with this.
Sammy much earlier asked, what's your take on powerful, good NPCs? If you have one, why doesn't that powerful NPC go save the kidnapped girl from the goblins instead of the weak player characters?
Sure. I'll give you a one-sentence answer. They're way too busy with more important stuff.
They're way too busy
and
with
I hate
to
say that, but I mean, they're fighting Balrogs. They don't have time to stop and do that. But question 2, good NPCs in your world, why don't they save the princess? Comment below.
It reminds me of... Doctor Who and Torchwood. Basically, the idea that when you watch the show Torchwood, you sometimes think, well, why doesn't Doctor Who just show up to all these problems they're having?
Yeah.
And
because he's busy.
Well, and because it makes it a good plot. Obviously, you can't, like you said, they're busy, and you can come up with certainly reasons in the moment, like in the real story.
Yeah.
But in general, you're like, well, because you need to have... you need something.
Sure. Well, it's the same thing with the Marvel Universe. The Avengers can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
That's why Daredevil and the Punisher and, all these... Yeah, so.
There is a... but they said... Oh, what was it? Oh, there was an NPC in a book we did a long time ago, and he was like a little bit like sort of a Robin Hood / Batman character that lived in the...
yes. Do you remember his name? I remember his name.
Stanchion Corsica. Really cool guy. So, but it's the same kind of thing. I'm like, it's one guy, and it's like a whole, like a metropolis of, hundreds of thousands of people, and I'm like, well, he can't be everywhere. Which is, the interesting part is sometimes they can show up. You know what I mean? Sometimes they can come in and do cool stuff and arrive and like, oh, you get that cool moment. Just be careful because...
I was going to say, I'm going to tell you a secret. Gandalf is that character.
Yeah, he is.
He shows up, and then what? Why does he leave? Because he has other stuff that he has to take care of. I have to go and speak with you. Oh. You're like, oh, but why don't you just help us through this forest real quick? The most dangerous part of the journey Why don't you help us through that real quick?
Yeah, just real fast.
And
If
then
could
you
do that.
can get on your horse that goes faster than light. Anyway.
Game Master Toolbox said, question 1, they are small protoplanets for godlings learning their powers. A test lab. That's so cool.
Ooh, that's so good. Make sure when the video goes live or when the video is not live, you post that in the commentos.
Oh, this is for the comments. We should wrap up. It's way past 6.
Yeah, I'm down. We did start late, though, to be fair.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, it means that we give these people a solid hour of our time.
I don't know.
I know.
I don't know about that.
Listen, no, I understand. Listen, James is the accountant.
That's me.
I just show up and look at the sand crawler that's got a light bulb in it.
So, I've never had this happen, but if you want to make a Lego set the hardest thing ever, put it half together.
Yes.
And then something happens where it comes apart a little bit.
And then you're like,
so I
where
was on my. Well, you have all the
he's
pieces.
got a
You
Lego
have to like
sand
go
crawler
through.
that is just never going to get put together because it's really difficult to go back. Anyway,
Basically, it was mostly done, or not mostly done. It was about halfway done. The cat knocked the chair on it. It blew apart, and most of it's still put together. But there's like a bunch of pieces, so I have to go through, and it's going to be a really interesting.
and I'm sorry for wasting your time that we could have been answering a real question on that.
We could have been, but
All right, so final question for real.
no, I think that was it. That's basically all the questions.
Okay. All right. This has been Area of Effect. We'll try to do this most Sundays from about 5 to 6 Eastern. If you if you want to submit questions early, you can do two things. You can either email tabletopterrors@gmail.com. Make sure that the subject line is Area of Effect so that we know, okay, first of all, you got a question, but second of all, you're okay with us reading it on the air. And then the second way is if you're in the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group, which is also in the description of this video, you can follow the thread that we'll post weekly for people to submit questions.
Enough people are saying thank you that I think it warrants us saying you're welcome.
You're welcome.
Because,
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're
Three
welcome.
or 4 people.
You're welcome. Your question has a much better chance of being read if you email it to us early or if you post on there because we're going to do those first.
Yeah, exactly. In that case, the first one we did was the one they posted.
Yes.
I think it was a good idea what we did to ask for questions early, bank them, and then sort of answer them. Because, like I said, usually we ask for questions. We don't have any,
and then we
get a bunch of great questions right at the end.
Yeah, so that's great. So check out the final thing I want to tell you to do is if you haven't subscribed to this channel, if you're new here, think about subscribing because this is what we're all about, just community and hanging out and talking D&D and having a blast. Make sure that you also subscribe to Mend the First Break. The first issue is coming out on Tuesday, and you don't want to miss that. So I think that's about it. Now the awkward time where we try to figure out how to close XSplit. I just X out of it. And,
and let
isn't that terrible?
That's not a good idea.
I feel like it's terrible.
Excuse me.
So let's see here. I think we need to do a Tabtarian toast.
We do. I forgot that part. May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
And may you conquer everything you undertake.
Sunshine.
Nope, you missed it. Nope, you don't. You just click the button.
You think?
We're going to learn